Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Ami Lee. I am the Director of Public Health Initiatives at SE International, also known as Somatic Experiencing International. We are a trauma resolution modality training institute to train practitioners, therapists, coaches, yoga teachers, medical professionals, school counselors, all kinds of folks, how to use the modality somatic experiencing as a neurobiological resolution method to resolve trauma. We do this out of our headquarters in Boulder, Colorado. However, we are represented in over 40 countries around the globe. We do trainings around the world. We've trained over hundreds of thousands of people in the modality. And I think we have at this point over 35,000 registered somatic experiencing practitioners in the world. Super exciting. And we're on the path with our research committees towards becoming an evidence-based practice. So we're really grateful to be with you all and be able to share some of our perspective from what we understand about this particular very pressing public health topic that we will be dealing with today, which is dealing with mental health, the hidden mental health professionals in the education sector. So welcoming you all, now that you all have filled up our channel here with where you are from, I see that I've got Arkansas on the line. I've got, hi, Jessica. I've got Hawaii. Hello. Oh, that sounds dreamy in the middle of winter in the Northern Hemisphere. I've got Jane from Cardiff, Wales, UK. How about that? Claire, Ireland, amazing. Paige in DC. Yes, Washington, DC. Yes, we've got it. Capital of the US. Phoenix, Arizona, Wisconsin. Hello, Inez from Portugal. Lauren in Virginia. Awesome, awesome. And nice. We have a teacher in Los Angeles. That is fantastic. I hope we have a bunch of teachers on the line. You're going to get a lot out of today's session. Wow, private voice educator in Houston, Texas. So cool, very legit. A voice educator. You're going to love what we're going to deal with today. Waco, Texas, nice. Community college. Okay, super good. Higher education, post-secondary. British Columbia, Canada. Someone who knows Patsy. Hi, Patty. Jory Sheen from Regina, Saskatchewan, Atlanta, Alberta, North Carolina, Edmonton. Okay, Canada is really represented in the house. Nice. Jetta May from San Diego. Fantastic. Brooklyn. Fantastic. British Columbia Ministry of Education. Nice. Y'all, please be in touch with us if there's any more follow-up we can do after this, because this is a dialogue that will continue. Cape Town, South Africa. Woo! Amazing. Autumn Lands, known colonialist, Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you, Elle. Thank you for naming it that way too. Regina in Canada. More. In Alaska. Tammy, we found you in Alaska. Awesome. You guys, this is a big gathering because this is a big conversation, because we're in a world where there are schools all around the globe, where in those schools, there are people who operate as hidden mental health professionals. The idea for this session actually came up when I was speaking with someone who is a special ed instructor in New York City. And she was talking with me about how all the teachers have the experience that they have to identify what's happening with the kids' nervous systems and their well-being and their behavior. And even though they're not certified or licensed to diagnose, they're constantly having to make quick, difficult decisions about the child or participant's level of attention, ability to comprehend, if there might be what might seem like a mental health issue, or maybe just a deep crisis issue in their family, or something that's surfacing behaviorally or cognitively. That really puts educators and school counselors in a very profound mental health role in the formation of human beings everywhere. Today's conversation will begin to get to that. So I want to invite our participants, Patsy, Colleen, Danica, Katie, join us on screen so we can get started. And really, the context for this, everyone who may be joining us for the first time, hey, raise your hand if this is the first time you've ever been on one of these things, people in the participant side, and we'll see how many of you have never been with us before. You're going to get to listen to these 4. Hi, guys. So nice to see you. I know one of you is even at work right now. Thank you for calling in from your school counseling office. Each one of these folks will be conversing with each other. I like to say it's like you get to listen in, like eavesdrop on your favorite teachers down the hall and what they talk about when they're amongst themselves. So they're just going to get going. They'll be in a groove. They'll be in a conversation. And as you get any questions, as you start wondering, or maybe you've come with questions today, put them in that Q&A, and I will come back on screen, interrupt these 4 lovelies, and say, hey, we've got a question, and we want to bring someone on. I'm done talking. Now it's time for them. Folks, welcome. I'd love it if you could introduce yourself to the people who have joined us today by sharing with us your response to the question, how did you become interested in mental health in school populations? Like, what is it that even brought you in that direction? Is there one of you who would like to go first?
I would love to share that. So good morning. It's still morning for me here in California. And I wanted to say welcome. Thank you for, I guess, joining all of us here today. I began, I want to say, in the mental health and wellness for schools approximately in 2010. So I had become a board member for an organization, which I hold very close to my heart, the SCB Youth Project. It was our executive director, Kim Goldman, that had brought me on again back in 2010. And I worked very closely with the board, learning some of the, I want to say, just concerns and different things that were going on in the schools with students. This was a program that offered free mentoring, therapy. Gosh, we did things called lunchtime madness. We were on the school campuses, ranging between the junior high and high schools. So the more that I was included in a lot of the projects from this organization, it really started to allow me to connect with students and also educators, right, and staff. From there, I actually became an intern and started counseling in one of our high schools, which again was a different eye opener for me. And up to this date, I started in about 2018 working as a volunteer for one of our wellness centers. Our school district had started creating these programs through the high schools, and they were wellness centers. Because of certain events that have taken place since 2018, all of our schools now come equipped with a wellness center. And I recently just joined our local college campus. It's called Academy of the Canyons, where I am now one of the wellness team coordinators. So I work very closely with a lot of our staff here, and together we work with the youth. One thing that was really important during my time is that not only have I been here working with students, but also educators and teachers. So even during the pandemic, you really saw just everything unravel. So I really got close to some of our staff, and I was able to hold, and a lot of this is because of SC. So I learned a lot of tools and techniques, which helped me also be there to connect with what was happening in the current moments. So truly that's my, background, and I think through everything, especially I always say because of SE, learning a lot again of the tools and techniques, it just really helped me to connect better. So I've been really honored and blessed to be able to, again, do what I do and be able to continue moving forward.
I'll go next. Thanks, Danica. And thanks for everybody for listening. I started, I guess around, like 2008, I started working in immigration resettlement and refugee resettlement. And around that same time, started teaching yoga and really got involved in the resettlement community. And I also started doing mentorship and leadership with Amigos de las Americas in Central America and the Caribbean. So I didn't see myself then working in education, but I worked with teens a lot, and I worked with a lot of different populations. When I moved back to Kansas City, which is where I'm from, I went to grad school, continued working with immigrants and refugees as a case manager. But I was so interested in therapy, and I saw people. The first experience I had with SE was a client of mine at the shelter where I worked in Austin, and she was having a really hard time just like eating and doing basic things. And so nothing was really working, and she was going to counseling. But the Center for Survivors of Torture in Austin had a SEP on staff, and she started seeing her, and she got better like really fast. And I was so inspired by that. And I read some of Peter Levine's books, and I was like, okay, I want to do this. So then fast forward, I finished grad school, worked in community mental health, and what else? Like a lot of community mental health. And then what else? Like also yoga teaching. It was just like all these things out like all over the place, kind of how grad school is. And then I got out of grad school, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do. I'd worked with a lot of survivors of sexual abuse, and a lot of teens and adults, and there's teens and adults in schools and high schools. And I had the opportunity to work at the alternative high school in Wyandotte County, which is where I've worked since I moved back here. And I'm really passionate about the county in general, and just like my place in it and what I can do for it. So and together with it. So I just jumped into education. And it's really cool because it kind of like merged all the things I had been doing together. And I was really attracted to it because school is a place where not everybody goes, but a lot of students go there that maybe can't access mental health services or have a experience with DCF or with our broken mental health system and don't want to go to therapy. And so school is a place, especially this alternative high school, there's a lot of flexibility with schedules, and there's less students. And it's just been really cool to be able to work with students kind of as an incognito therapist, and provide that, but make it accessible and less like scary or less obligatory. Like a student that I work with that I have therapy goals with recently was like, you'd be a really good therapist, Ms. Jones. And I'm just like, and so it's just really nice to build those relationships in education and with the teachers too and staff. So that's how I got here.
Great. Well, I'll pop in. Good to see everybody here. I can't see your faces, but I can see that there's people here, and I'm excited to be here, and thanks for joining us. So my intro into mental health in schools actually started a long time ago. I started out as a classroom teacher in rural Saskatchewan, actually in the late 80s, so quite a few years back. And teaching in rural Saskatchewan, you get to teach a lot of different grades often, a lot of different subject areas often. So I had a lot of interactions with a lot of kids. And what I realized fairly early on in my career was that it seemed like a lot of kids were really struggling at school. They seemed unmotivated, they seemed disengaged, and I never really bought into the idea that kids were lazy or that they were uninterested or that they just lacked motivation. So I always kind of had this sense that there was something else going on. So I was in the classroom actually for 13 years, and just kind of decided I wanted to take things in a different direction. So I started looking around for what was possible, and ended up pursuing a master's degree in education, but in counseling, which then allowed me to move into actually a counseling position in the same school division that I was actually currently working in. So that was really great. So what's been really great about it is I've had the time So I had 17 years as school counselor, and it gave me lots of time to hang out with kids, spend time with kids, get to know them, get a sense of what was actually going on for them. And my perceptions, I think, were pretty accurate, that the kids that were really struggling, there was lots going on. There was mental health things happening for them, health things happening for their families or their parents. So it gave me the time to spend with them and get to know them, which I so appreciated. And it also gave me time to spend with teachers. And I think having that background as a teacher gave me a bit of an in with some of the teachers, where they kind of knew where I was coming from, and when I would, could offer ideas or suggestions or encourage them to look at students maybe in a little bit different way. They were quite receptive to it. So that was kind of fun. And I really enjoyed that. A couple of years ago, I actually retired from education just before things kind of went really crazy with COVID. And I'm still in contact with a lot of my colleagues and have a lot of compassion for them, because I know it's been a really challenging road for them. But I work now in private practice, so I do that a couple days a week. But at the same time, I really have a lot of compassion for my colleagues and the teachers, and I'm still in contact with so many of them. So one of the things I'm hoping to do, I'm started to work on, is developing some more professional development for them, because I just think it's the SE, the kind of the understanding of the neurobiology is so helpful just for all of them, and how they interact with kids, how they view kids. So I'm working on developing some professional development opportunities that hopefully I can get out into our communities to support teachers and school counselors, because I know that not all of them have the advantage of having that background either. So that's kind of how I got there. And yeah, and I think one of my wishes still is I would love to see this information. I don't know that, SE can be part of teacher training, but I would love for teachers to, in their education, to become teachers, to get more of this kind of information. And I don't know, maybe in other parts of the world they do. It seems like where I am in Saskatchewan here, they don't get so much yet. So that's kind of where I've come from. So that's me.
Let's see. Hi, everybody. I'm Colleen Enright, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be with you all and share this panel with other educators. My journey, honestly, was spurred from early experiences of not having that support and having an imbalance of my nervous system, and taking action throughout high school and college, which put me in precarious situations. And I thought, if I can do anything with my career and my life, I want to help younger people to have that advantage and that opportunity that I didn't know, that was wrapped up in shame and guilt, and and it was really a physiological issue, and not having those resources and support. So in 2007, I started my master's, and the emphasis was counseling and human services, but I found that I wanted to do the school counseling route. And I knew that I wanted to do school counseling because I could meet with students on a more individual level, that I could have more of an impact, and hopefully the word is impact, and influence on them as they progress through their life. And what I was finding is the modalities that I was learning, the Rogerian theory, the existentialism, they were very heady, right? I mean, it was a lot of talk therapy, and there wasn't a lot of somatic experiences. So I began a school counseling. I first began in an elementary school, and I started my career in 2007. And what I found is that I wasn't reaching students. I was creating back on track plans. I was meeting them with groups and individually, but I wasn't getting to that heart of what was going on. And also, you know, this is a systemic thing within a school. And so what I was experiencing is the teachers had trauma, the parents had trauma, the students were saturated in an environment where there was no relief in terms of a nervous system. And at this time, as a counselor, right, I was seeking therapy. And it was actually my massage therapist who practiced SE on me. And I had profound changes after 5 sessions. And I knew when you know, right? This is my modality. And so I've been a high school counselor. I was in a brick and mortar school. We call it brick and mortar, a BAM school for 10 years. And I've been in an online school for 7 years. And then during that time, I also got my teaching license. So I have experience teaching in in a traditional school in the classroom. And so in the evenings, I see clients at night for SE sessions. I coach them. But I think what really spurred my interest in this is not only going through the trainings with SE and seeing people evolve through those 3 years, but also just using simple modalities with my students as they come into Zoom, because I'm on an online classroom. Even the grounding one with your hand under your armpit and on your arm, which helps them feel more safe in their body. So in a nutshell, I just feel like SE is such, it's a modality where you don't have to use talk therapy, and kids like to get up and move, and you don't have to explain to them what they're doing. So I found more lasting benefits with my current students, and I just think it's extremely beneficial. And there are things that are so simple and can be implemented in the classroom or in sessions with students as school counselors that can really benefit them not only at school, but at home and in their future lives. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here with you all, and I'll turn it over to the panel.
So I just wanted to start off, like, I mean, even just hearing everybody also share, and I don't know about all the amazing people joining us, but there was something that was briefly brought up earlier too, is obviously we all love movement, and even the whole thing with SE. And I find it so fascinating, actually, Patsy, what you were making mention of is, you know, I relate with what you were stating as far as how to bring like more of that SE training, you know, with teachers and educators and staff and counselors, you know, everyone, right? And I find that's kind of what we're doing in a way, even though there might not be this specific, you know, SE just specifically for teachers. But, you know, one thing I have to say is being here in the Wellness Center is I'm really finding that right now. Even with the students, I do these moment breaks, and even with educators, you know, a lot of the teachers. And so SE is really starting to become, you know, I have somatics, you know, I try to do things like yoga and somatics. I'm incorporating more of why it's the importance behind it. But I do find that the word's getting out there a little bit more, and just by the way we're, I think, just showing, right? Just kind of incorporating the work into our teachings. And just like you had mentioned, the same thing, Colleen, just taking a little movement from the talk therapy and just doing a little more body talk, I guess we could call it. But I just wanted to chip in on that because I do find it so fascinating, all the amazing, you know, ways that we're incorporating SE, right?
You guys remember Brain Gym? So before I was introduced to SE, the last name is Dennison, Gail Dennison. Her and her husband wrote Brain Gym, and it's all these exercises that are crossing the hemisphere. And so as I started to go through the SE trainings, I mean, there's even the one, I don't know if you guys want to do this with me, this is a fun one, where you stick your tongue to the left and you look up to the right and vice versa. So it looks like this.
Wait, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. It's too much fun. It's too much. Let's get other people to do this with us. Okay, like everyone's just getting to know us, and they're like, why does Ami just pop on screen? I will pop on screen 2 times. There's really good questions in the chat, which, by the way, ladies, those are popping up. But if any of these guys mention they want to do an exercise, Colleen, could you lead a little group of us in doing that and help us understand what it does? Because I'm thinking even the voice coach who's online, the voice educator, like, when we start to do anything here in that polyvagal neck complex area, we know there's so many different benefits, and maybe you could lead some. Would you be up for reading? Okay, folks, attend. Oh, hands are already raised. I think they're raised from earlier. I'm gonna put down all the hands. Dion, if you're out there and you can help me do it, I've lost the access to it. So if you could lower all the hands, please. Or if your hand is currently raised, lower it. And then I'll give you a special question because I don't want to bring anyone over who does not give us their consent. So I really want to make sure that you have your consent. So everybody, so now if we'll do this a couple of times throughout our session today, because we're going to just do activities. I mean, you guys are teachers and educators. So like, let's just do some activities too, right? So raise your hand if you want to come on screen. We'll bring you on screen. We'll still keep you muted, you know, but then you'll just get to do the exercise with us. All right, we've got one person, a couple of people. All right, we're starting to port you guys over. Yeah, it'll be weird when your hand gets raised and we bring you over. So Colleen, Patsy, Danica, Katie, you can keep chatting as folks are coming on. And then once we have maybe 5 or 6 or even just 4, go ahead and get the exercise going. Okay.
And Colleen, I like what you were just talking about. You know, they have something right now on Netflix that's like the same thing. I actually caught my partner. I'm like, on Netflix, they turned it on and it's utilizing both hemispheres. I was like, what is this? So I think right in line with what you're talking about, it's made it onto Netflix now. So I mean, I don't know if anybody's seen that, but yeah, it has some really cool practices.
So awesome.
What is the
It is
Netflix
fun.
show?
I don't know. We were just sitting there and
Message me after.
he puts it on and he's like, oh, I do this. And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, oh, it works your brain and it does all the sides. And so I didn't catch the title, but I was like, whoa. But it's right. It may be
cool.
just like Headspace, you know, maybe it's the same thing. They may have just made it onto Netflix.
Oh, great. Do you want me to start, Ami?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the first one that I love is from Brain Gym, but then I want to share one that I also do with students, and this is SE. And so basically what we learn in our SE trainings, right? So different so when the nervous system is in basically a suppressed mode, right? It's in a freeze state, it's in a dorsal state, and it's hard for students to learn when they're so suppressed. So one thing is movement actually brings them up into this space called the ventral vagal. It's kind of the ventral vagal space where they can, it's where they can communicate and they can connect, right? So as long as they're suppressed, they can't come out of that. So the first thing, I'll do the Brain Gym, and then I'll show you the one that I do with students when they come into my Zoom room. But what we do is, so you're going to take your eyes to the left and your tongues to the right, and we're going to go back and forth. So I'll model and then you can do it with me. It looks kind of funny, but that's okay. So you're going to do the opposite, right? So
I feel like I've seen goat videos where goats do this.
and if we do that, what that does is that also crosses the left and right hemisphere of Brain Gym. So you're working from a whole kind of brain, a whole mind state. So let's just take a second to do that for a second so we can just even regulate and orient here.
That's really hard.
Isn't it? And then what I do with
hard.
my students is I pause. And then I know this is orienting, but I ask them, what do you see things differently? Do you hear things differently? Are colors brighter? Are you noticing your feet on the ground? How heavy are your legs? So after I do an exercise like that, and then when they come into my classroom and I make it really funny, especially one-on-one, when I have one of those, I had a student yesterday, she was so resistant, just attitude, right? And I said, you know what, gosh, sitting all the time here, let's do this exercise. It will just, help me. I need some help here. I'm kind of staticky today. And then I do this, blah, 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 blah. And then I look all
Okay.
around.
As we're doing this together, do we have to make that sound, Colleen? I mean, I don't
You
mean
don't have to.
Well, okay, so everyone at home though, like you're not on video right now, so you have to do this. I'm already blushing right here. Feels weird. But yeah, I can feel let's all do that. Let's really slow down and do it. That's cool.
Just notice how you feel after this. You don't have to make the noises, but it's the faces. You're moving your eyes left to right, your tongue, your chin, your jaw. And I make funny voice noises because they laugh. So I'm just going to do that to show you how I am with my students. But and then actually they start talking more. And there's a different presence. It brings them into the present moment. And as we know with trauma, right, it's really scary to be with what's going on presently. So it creates that space of safety. And also like Diane Poole Heller, right, in the attachment styles, we're also connecting on a relational level.
This is really interesting, Colleen. Can we just open this up a little more? Because I hear you sharing the concept of it and it's really good. And also y'all have started to mention SE. And I just want to say to those of you who aren't SE familiar, like this isn't an SE commercial. Like that's not the point of this program. These 4 people though have worked in your field and you get that. And then they started to study somatic experiencing, which is the work of Dr. Peter Levine. If you're not familiar of that, it's a modality that you can learn a lot by the book Waking the Tiger, which is his first kind of preeminent book. And then there's some really great books by Maggie Payne. I won't say anything in case anybody will want to mention her work later. But really all of these folks have done this like 3-year training, right? So we start to do all this physiological stuff, but we're not trying to sell you on the training. We're still just trying to give you actual resources right now that you can use in your world. Because I'm seeing folks, just so you know, participants, like they're asking questions like, how do we deal with our own health and wellness right now? So that's all coming up inside today's conversation. So maybe, Colleen, do you want to lead us in a little conversation about what we experienced? Like as if we just, we did just do that exercise. Maybe we could check in with our bodies or do it again and have us look.
So one thing that trauma does, right? Trauma can live in the body, right? And so we're expecting our students to be like present and do work and be focused when it's so scary to be in the moment. And so what these exercises do is trauma's really up, right? It goes up, right? You can see someone's eyes get huge, they become really intellectual, or they can be like, they can't talk, they're in this state of freeze where they can't focus. So doing these exercises, actually, it puts a balance between the upper and the part, and please help me out, panelists, because I don't know all the specific terms. It takes so long to learn them all. But I mean, it brings this connection, how I see it, a body-mind connection. So there's a connection between the ventral vagal nerve, right? So there's activation. And so the student is working from a whole body state. And so with these exercises, we're bringing them into the present moment. And I don't know if anybody remembers the book Focusing. And it's such a fabulous book, right? And we're learning to, I forgot, does anyone know who the author is? I have it on my bookshelf.
Eugene something. I believe it's Eugene. I cannot think.
Gwendolyn or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Felt
that
sense.
was actually my massage therapist. She introduced me to that book. And that's how I started to do like body awareness on myself. So right now what happens is, so after we did those exercises, what I do with the students, I try and bring them to, how do your feet feel? Do you feel yourself grounded in your seat? What's the weight of your body? What do you hear? Do you smell anything? Do you taste your lunch? And then I don't want to jump around, but another thing that's really helpful, it's another exercise, and then I'll just let someone else go, but I have them tap their arms and say, this is my arm. This is my left arm. And then I have them rub their head. This is my head. And I have them say it out loud. And this is my chest. And these are my legs. And so it just brings movement, especially for those students that are so in that dorsal state, that suppressed state, where they don't even want to move. Does anyone want to chime in and help explain that better?
I was just going to say, I think, yeah, I always think of it in terms of where's the nervous system and how do we bring them more into a more kind of regulated state, right? And I think that's often a word that we hear a lot. I know in education, we used to hear about regulation all the time. So it's kind of a way that they understand, right? That we used to understand that. And it's like, yeah, how do we help bring them into that kind of more regulated state? So either bringing them from here down or from here up, right? And so some of those, there's different kinds of activities that we can do to do that.
I'm gonna interrupt and just say thanks, guys, for coming on screen. We'll bring other folks back. We'll kind of do some exercises. Other folks can join us. We don't mean to keep you on screen while we're explaining everything, but we'll bring people on when we do them, and then we'll take you off when we're not, and we're just talking about them. If that's okay, that's kind of a good workable format. Didn't mean to leave you on here for so long, having us peer at you as well. So thank you for joining us. And so thank you, guys. Keep going. Can I? What about a question from the audience? Would you guys be up for a question from the audience? I believe that Margie had a really nice question and she wanted to come online and ask it. So I'd love to bring her over to ask it. Looking for you in our list right now, Margie. Thank you for being available. And she's about to come on screen. I'll jump off and she can ask you what she has.
Hi.
Hi.
I teach adults at a local community college, the GED preparation class. And right now I'm actually doing the enrollment team where we bring the students in and we do some assessments. And then we ask them questions like, can you work for 8 or 10 hours a week on your GED with the rest of your whole life? So these students come in, well, half of them are scared to death. So they're like this. And then the other half are going, okay, show me how I can get my GED in 2 weeks. So I have a big mix. And I mean, I'm an engaging, friendly, middle-aged or older woman. So I do okay with many of the students just by being myself. But I was just wondering, and I really like those exercises, but I have fun and I'm okay with looking silly. How, I mean, do you think I could do those with adults? Those, the exercises, and how can I just want them to be able to trust me a little bit. And I'm trying to enable them to trust themselves too, that they can do this thing, that, it takes some work and some time and some dedication. So just wanting some kind of input.
I think for me, just my experience with my students is I have to create this space of trust, of relationship first. And then I start with really actually not as intrusive exercises. So there's one that I love where you put your right hand under your armpit and you put your left hand on your shoulder. Yeah, that's right, Margie. And then and what this does is this creates a space of safety. Yeah, even good breath. Yeah,
I like that.
And did you see yourself breathe in?
Uh-huh.
You took a breath, and that's actually a sign of nervous system regulation, right? It's it's like, oh gosh, this tastes so good, right? So I start with small, simple exercises. And then for me, what I've learned as a classroom teacher, and even those students that I see weekly for sessions, is it's about being repetitive. So they know, okay, I'm going to come in and we're going to do this right away. So they already know what to expect. It's like Henry Wong. Do you guys remember Henry Wong? He wrote The First Days of School.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right. And he said, set up your classroom. So that's what I do in my sessions with students. And then I kind of tie it into the curriculum too, even when I'm teaching, like I teach a college class, and I make it really funny and I try and blend it. So that's my experience.
Thank you.
I think too, even just acknowledging when they come in, how difficult, it might be, or how scary it might be for them. Like, I do
that verbally.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important part, even just that verbal, right? Because it lets them know. And sometimes that is even settling for people, just to have it acknowledged that, yeah, I know this is scary and we're here to support you in whatever way we can. So yeah, I'm sure you already do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and even just inviting them at that point to just, feel themselves in the chair.
Yeah.
See if they can feel their chair, see if they can feel their feet
Yeah.
on the ground, give themselves a moment to just, settle and look around the room. Um, 'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes they come in and they just want to get on with it.
Yeah, I feel like probably a lot of people that have joined do things that we talk about in SE all the time, because some of it is just so like, yeah, just kind of natural meeting someone where they are, which is something that, every teacher wants to do and every mental health professional wants to do. And so just like, I always try and find a way to like meet them kind of at the same place where they are. Not like, well, me too, but like really, yeah, like Patsy said, like validating how they might feel, and then being the person that might be a little bit more regulated, and not to an extreme of either way, because no one wants like a super calm person that's like not recognizing that you're really stressed out, but
Yeah.
something just a little bit more regulating with your body. And I think like I relate to you in some of those ways where, the person that's walking in your room, if you've never met before, there might be some resistance, or just like they're carrying a lot and they don't really know what they're in for. And so I just do a lot of modeling, and a lot of like noticing, and not too much noticing. So they're like, what is this lady doing? Like, why is she noticing every breath that I take or something? But just kind of like doing it myself and trying to slow down myself. And but like if they feel kind of in freeze, like they are like, they're not talking very much, or they're not really present. I know this might not work in your setting in particular, but something that sometimes works depending on where the person's at is, and sometimes some of our students are like resistant to, I don't know, they're teenagers, and a lot of times they struggle with like being oppositional, or like not wanting to participate because
Right.
they've already been, kind of been through the ringer in a multitude of ways. But sometimes I'll just have them go like run an errand to my car with me, or like, can I go get something real quick, or can you help me carry something from my car? Or, I mean, obviously that wouldn't work in your setting sometimes when you're meeting with an adult that's just trying to like plan their thing, but their GED. But then I think like all of what we've said is really experiential, and then checking in. And that's what I love about SE, that it's not like, okay, let me explain this concept to you, and let me like talk a lot and do some, CBT can be great in some ways, and like no one, like someone's in freeze, or, a big sympathetic arousal isn't really going to want to listen to your like diagram or your concept. So sometimes I'm just like, you want to just go do this thing, and then we'll come back and we'll be kind of walking back, or we would have arrived, and I'll be like, what do you notice that's different? You seem a little bit different. Like you seem a little more present with me, or whatever language kind of fits the description. But they're like, oh yeah, like I feel better now. And all we did was get a box of Cheez-Its from your car or whatever. So that's been something that I'd like to use, especially just because it's so natural. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you. And actually, when I have early birds who show up 20 minutes early, so I always have them help us turn on the computers, wake them up, go to the right website. And telling you, those 4 or 5, they're always present the whole time, because they're like, they're part of it. I mean, they're like a host and hostess.
Like they got oriented.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's cool.
So yeah, that's good. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
And I just have a sense, Margie, from listening to you that also, and watching you, that just how you are is calming and welcoming for the students. Yeah. Like just your presence as we're experiencing it right now, I think is a a really
Thank you.
important part.
And I do try to tell them, oh, you know, the projector screen wouldn't come down. I just feel so blah, blah, blah. So I do some modeling of how I can calm down by my self-talk. But the whole, that would be great, however it is. That'll help me because I'll do it.
Let me
Yeah.
show you one more time, Margie.
Okay,
Real fast.
I wrote it down, right hand under left.
Yeah, so right hand under left armpit, and then your left hand on your shoulder. And then even if you do it on yourself and practice, this is what I do. Like before I start work in the morning, sometimes I'll just sit there, you know,
Yeah,
and I'll feel it for a couple minutes, but it's a great exercise.
yeah.
It's like a hug, you know.
It is. It is. Thank you.
They're so wise and so fun to be with. I feel like since you're teachers, you can just lead us all through so many great things. Marjorie, did that help you with your question?
Yes,
Did that get you
yeah.
somewhere? Thank you so much for joining us. We'll send you back over with the attendee side. Yeah. And this is great. I can let y'all just chat among yourself a little bit, but we're also getting some other fun questions in the chat. You just like to take a moment to chat amongst yourselves about what's coming up, or would you like me to bring someone else on?
Sure, bring
Happy if you
someone.
want to. I was just going to say, yeah, if you want to bring somebody else
Bring
on,
it. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
But we're so in this together. So to all of the folks who are in attendance too, let me tell you, if you're trying to write in there to these beautiful women on the screen, I have asked them to not look at the Q&A so that they can really be with you. So they're not in there with you. So just, you know, Kiana's in there. She'll be answering questions and asking you if you want to come on screen. So if there's something you want to ask one of the panelists directly, like, you know, let us know if we can bring you on to go ahead and ask it. And if there's something you can ask all of them, like someone asked, you know, should they read that Henry Wong book? You know, would you recommend that? You know, and that's just a yes or no question. What do y'all say to that? Thumbs up, thumbs down, read the Henry Wong book.
If you're a teacher, absolutely.
Okay, cool. We got that one answered.
And I would even say, even like, I use it for school counseling too. Like,
Yeah.
just having like a continuing it's not saying it has to be set in stone, but the nervous system does like some kind of routine. It's safe, right? I know this person's safe. So that Henry Wong book just talks about how important it is to set up a routine and expectations at the beginning of the year.
So cool. So super cool. All right, well then the next person I'd like to bring over is Yoel, who I think, if I recall from the very beginning, Yoel mentioned that their teacher in Los Angeles. So and it has a couple of good questions starting to go in the chat for a few of you. And then there is another human who is chiming in from overseas, who is, I'm going to read this so you can maybe just weave it into your response because they're not able to come on screen. But they're saying they started a new job as an English teacher at a community school in a very poor area and asking for any recommendation for exercises that help connect with young children, age 8 to 12. So as Joelle is asking, if any of you start to have some exercises, percolate, and we'll bring more on to come do that. So Joelle, we're looking, come on, there we go. I'll pop off screen and Joelle, you can go ahead and bring your video online with us.
So, hello again. I have kind of two questions. One was, well, it's something about what Colleen said, but then someone else piggyback on with other, you know, I'm a newbie at this. And Colleen, you said this exercise that you did with the tongue and the eyes was for people who have their nervous system suppressed. And I'm not quite sure how can you tell that? What is that unsuppressed nervous system? Like, I'm that basic, like I'm at that level. And then my second question, I'll just say them now, is, you know, I teach a large number of students, which are going to be all over the place. Like, are there exercises that can actually bring them all to kind of a same regulated state when we are starting in different places? So those are my two questions. And I don't know if I'm making any sense.
So one thing we're learned, and maybe someone else, the panelist wants to take this too, is one thing we learned in the training is we learned to track people, and Katie even mentioned it, and so did Margie. They were talking about the people who are kind of sunken in. That is like a symbol that someone's nervous system is pretty heavy, that it's suppressed. There's other things that we can see in their facial expressions, in their body language. Maybe they walk really like, you know, heavy and slowly. Can anyone else think? Those are cues that we can see that there's a suppressed state. Does anyone else want to share on that?
A lot of it too, and for both questions, so in that dorsal vagal, or when we're in that numbing state or shut, you know, a lot of times students, I always giggle, and it's the head down and they're resting. And so exercises that bring just a little more stimulation into the nervous system, you know, sometimes you sit and we call it reach for apples, you know, and just kind of like you're taking an apple just to get movement. There's the opening of the hands and closing, and see if they can actually notice the fingertips, right? Touching the palms. And is it pushing into the palms, the fingertips, or is it a light grip? And what that also does is it creates a bit of blood flow, right? And it wakes you up, because why? It goes straight to the heart, right? Hands connected straight to heart. So it helps a lot of times there. There was a question also that was just brought up, and I'm just going to put it up and show it because I always have this with me. It was already made mention, Maggie Klein's book. Right here, it's a wonderful resource. Maggie is not only one of my close mentors, but a great friend. And together we've worked on some school projects. And this book is an amazing book full of exercises, right? I mean, and to be honest, when it comes to adults, there's no one exercise, because even if there's an exercise for a child, we as adults like fun too. So just as Colleen gave, you know, that exercise, I think adults, because what would happen? It kept making me laugh. So I felt definitely my facial muscles, because I just wanted to keep laughing on top of wherever my eyes would resource to, you know, nice ones, the hug, right? It's where a lot of our nerves run through, right? Our neck is usually very tense, just holding the back of the neck sometimes. Those are great ways to connect. And you notice, you ask simple questions like to your class, you know, is it a hard, you know, how's your grip? Is it a soft grip? You know, is it a tight grip? You know, you start to use that language also while you're doing the exercises, as it was already made mention, just like the grounding, if we're seated in the chair, you know, is your right foot pushing a little more into the ground? You start to slowly go and just build that awareness, you know, with the students or teachers. I mean, any of these exercises are just beautiful for anyone. I think it just depends on your audience and where you are and what you're noticing. So if there seems to be a little bit more of a shutdown, you know, just that everybody's just having that kind of day, you know, bring a little more energetics into something soft and subtle, and go from there. You know, people can stand, you know, there's some great movements just standing or right in their desk space. You know, or just, again, simply just waking up. Little hug, so that self hug, you know, right hand into the armpit. And but yeah, but I just wanted to also make that book, because we've already mentioned it, I think a couple times. It's already come by, and really it's like it's just full of activities. It's great for school. It was designed for school.
Yoel, how old did you say the kids you work with are?
So I'm a Spanish teacher, so I work from first grade through 8th grade.
Okay.
So I have the whole range, obviously not
Right.
all together, but yeah.
So there's a couple old programs, and part of it, when I'm hearing you saying, how do I recognize? And they're actually programs that you can, one's older, one's not as old, that you can actually teach kids to recognize in themselves. So there used to be one called How Does Your Engine Run? I don't know if anybody remembers that. It was an old program we had here. And I think it was OTs or physiotherapists used it a lot. And it's teaching kids to recognize, do I rev high? So do I feel kind of jittery and shaky and kind of fidgety and have a hard time sitting still? Or do I feel really tired? And do I feel really heavy? And I've seen variations of it over the years. Some people used Winnie the Pooh and Tigger and Eeyore, right? And I've seen there's a Stick Kids is another, it's a computer program that I was introduced to many years ago by another OT. And it has, you know, an image of, there's a rabbit that's fast and a turtle. And then in the middle, there's this little boy stick guy standing on a balance board. And so it's a way to teach kids about that too, so that they start to recognize. And then you've kind of got a common language with kids to say, gee, it looks like everyone's revving really high right now. So they understand too what's happening. And there's another called zones of regulation that people use as well. And again, the ideas are all the same. It's teaching kids and yourself to recognize what's happening, and then building in some of those things. And ideally, in an ideal world, kids then start to be able to recognize and use some of the things themselves that you're using at times when they notice that they're moving, you know, into more of that revved up state, or when they're feeling really tired and lethargic. So there's lots of different programs like that. No, go ahead.
No, because my second question was, what happens, you know, when you get a group of kids and you have the kids who are like this, but you have the kids who are completely, you know, and you're working in a group, you're not doing it individually. Like, my second question was, are there exercises that could work for, you know, people being in both ends, so we can just come back to kind of a group balance?
I have one that I really liked I recently finished my first advanced training, and before every day we do like some sort of activities, so we learn a lot of them. And one that I really liked that would kind of do that, because you have to tune into your body, but it's also moving. It's standing up. So I don't know if y'all want to do it with me.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of my body you can see, but I'll try and roll
Hey,
back.
Katie, wait, I want to bring more on screen.
Okay.
John, would you mind? Anybody raise your hand if you want to come on. More the merrier. It's so fun to do these exercises as a group. Raise your hand if you'd like to come on screen, anybody, because Katie's going to lead us through an exercise. I know you're all at school right now, so it's a little hard. People had to leave for the car lines. All right. As they're coming on, go ahead and say whatever you want to say, Katie.
Okay, well, this one can involve clapping, but I think if it's in a group of people, that would probably get really confusing and disorienting, because you're clapping at the rate of your heartbeat. So if everyone's heartbeat was a little bit different, it'd be like all over the place. But you just have people get up and feel their heartbeat and just tune into that for a second. Really get a feel for the rhythm of it. And you really got to listen a little bit, like the classroom has to, or wherever you are, kind of has to quiet down a little bit so you can hear it or you can feel it. And then you just start to move with the rhythm of it. So if someone was embarrassed, you know, they could just do this. And those kids who are more outgoing and like, you know, want to do more funny stuff, they could be like, you know, like, or, you know, they could like go down or do really big movements.
Katie, is there an idea that as we pay attention to the heart, like we're noticing, like, does that influence how we move? Is that how you guide them through it? Or
So I'm just, and I would ask them questions through it. And sorry, I just heard my principal like yelling down the hallway. So I was like, what is happening? But I feel like if you're just kind of guiding them, and you don't have to know the exact right language, but just like, what do you want to do now? Or where do you want to move in the room? Or do you want to walk? Do you want to stay standing? Do you want to sit down? Maybe if there's a lot of people who are disengaged, you don't want to ask them to sit down, because then they'll just be like, okay, whatever, I'm not going to do this. But like, what are you noticing if your heartbeat changes, like if it speeds up or if it slows down? And it just kind of invites people to get curious and do something that's more engaging. And then it also, for those students who are maybe like on level 11, then they have to tune in and listen to that rhythm. So they have to kind of slow down a little bit. And it can, I think, some people might be disengaged, but I think a lot of kids, no matter what their age, and adults, love like games or a challenge. And you don't automatically listen to what your heart rate is. So it's an activity that's a little more active. Yeah.
that was really, really, really awesome.
Thank you.
But I love that it was so simple. Yoel, do you feel like that hit the spot for you? Did you get some support for what you're working with?
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for coming on. Thanks to Marjorie also for joining us. I know everyone else who's on is like, I don't want to come on screen. Sorry, we're putting you on the spot.
I'm
Like,
like,
sorry, not sorry.
it's also, I usually facilitate some sort of mindfulness with staff before we have meetings. And that can be like, if you don't have time during your PD, or if you're really under-resourced or whatever, like if you have time with your staff, you can always, have a minute or 2 minutes to just do some orienting activity like that. And it might help staff connect too.
That's actually right inside the next question that I'd love to read to you guys, because it's written by an anonymous attendee, so they won't come on. But I really love what you just said, Katie, and I hope people are starting to getting some resources, getting some access. A few things I'd like to share with you, since we've passed the top of the hour, is that because you're attending this and you're hearing about somatic experiencing for the first time, that's cool. I told you it's not a commercial, I promise you that. But it really occurs to me that inside your profession, if you can benefit from any of this education, I would like for you to be able to. So while all the folks you're with today have taken our 3-year training and have gone through all the way to become practitioners, we do have a 3-hour basics, like introduction training, and it happens live, usually about once a month. It's not led by our faculty, it's led by another practitioner. They're very cool. It's kind of like a broad overview of the nervous system, understanding, like, to some of your questions, what do you look for when people are talking about activated or dysregulated nervous systems? Just get some more tools in your toolbox. I want to give that to you as a thank you for you coming today. So really, thank you for coming today. It's basics, and you can go to traumahealing.org and look at the trainings. You type in the word basics, and that's what we're going to give you a code to. The way for you to get the code, pay attention right now. I'm about to tell you something, but Kiana will also write this in the Q&A for you too. Send an email to publichealth@traumahealing.org. and let us know that you'd like the basics code. In fact, if you want to let us know anything else about you, we'd love to just keep knowing you and be able to create more things for people who are wanting it. This is a free public health series. We are a charitable nonprofit. We're more than happy to do these programs for free. And it really helps my board and executive director know that you find this useful. If you might also go, drum roll, this is my NPR commercial break, traumahealing.org, www.traumahealing.org/SECC will take you to our donation page, where if you were to donate a cup of coffee a day, which in some parts of the world is 50 cents and in other parts is $12, 12 USD. But if you, or, hey, $1 million, no one would stop you. We would love that. It would allow us to do more scholarships for more socially vulnerable populations. Like, any of your donations really go to critical programming access for people who might not have access otherwise. So please consider making a small donation for your attendance today. Would really really mean a lot to us. That is traumahealing.org/SECC. And in the Q&A, Kiana will share that. She will also share with you the email for you to write to get the basics code. And if you are an SEP or an SE student and you'd like to be featured on any of these kind of panels, we have all kinds of panels coming up this year on hidden mental health professionals. Please get in touch with us at that email, or we can also drop in the Speakers Bureau link where we get to know a little bit more about your background. So that's your big commercial break. I do it all at once instead of a million other times. So thank you for bearing with. I'm going to breathe because I've done the training too. And I know how important it is to stop just shouting at the screen. Anybody else starts to feel like that? Okay. So back to our programming. There's a question in the Q&A from an anonymous attendee. And I'd love to hear what anybody would have to say. And in fact, since we're not getting as many people wanting to come on screen for the exercises, if you'd like to lead an exercise and facilitate it for the 4 of you, that would also be primo as a response to this question. The question is, I'm looking for how to get support for teachers, especially after teaching during the pandemic, right? We all get that. Without the SE training, how do we even get started in schools? These children are struggling. So what I'm hearing in that question is these students are struggling and us teachers are struggling. We don't have training in mental health. Like, where can we begin with our own health? So that's what you started to say, Katie. And if y'all could share a little bit about how teachers and educators can stay healthy in light of pandemic activation, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll move on that for just a moment. I'll open it that up is because especially during the pandemic, that's when I was called in quite a bit to do a lot of Zoom facilitating, right, for educators, and also what students were going through. And there was a really good book one I did with our district, Help for Billy. And it was a really wonderful way to take a lot of the dialogue to, like, just also sometimes incorporating things like this, learning about window of tolerance, kind of learning about, again, the nervous system. And another wonderful one is, and this goes right in line with SE, is Deb Dana has wonderful ways that we work with our nervous system, and they really teach it in a very beautiful, simple format too, understanding that ventral vagal, right, the sympathetic and the dorsal vagal. And so a lot of times with educators and even the students, it was just working with some of these topics. I think it was Colleen, you and I had mentioned earlier, you do yoga as well, right? I think, yes. And, even fun things tying in, for educators, just bringing stuff in is movement, right? Movement, and just educating on what, as all of us have discussed, right? And I think that a lot of the main format for SE is just what you're noticing. Sometimes we're so into the outer extremities, and a word that always comes up is that was really running a lot of compassion fatigue, but there is really no compassion fatigue. It's empathic distress, right? Burnout. And I think that's what we have faced and what we are facing, right, within the educational system. And when you learn how to come back into a sense of, there's this beautiful acronym that was taught to me, GRACE, and it's always just gathering awareness, gathering awareness in every moment. And sometimes as a teacher or student or facilitator, it's taking that moment. So whether it's the grounding of feeling the chair, and then it's recalling intention. Right. So sometimes I teach the students, and actually our principal, I was teaching this to the students the other day, and the principal happened to walk in and really was gathered by this one. Recalling your intention. What was that? So for students, it might have been homework. For students, it might be I have to pass, or whatever it could be. And for educators, it's also something, right? And then attuning. We always need to remind, no matter what element, who we're with, is to attune for a moment. So again, that's attuning to ourselves. How are we feeling? And then it better helps to understand and to attune with my audience, right? Whether it's an individual or whether it's a group, and teaching that same attunement, and then considering what will work. So a lot of us have all gone through, oh, this might work if we're over-energized, or this might work if we're kind of in this shutdown stage. And then engaging aging, right? So it's this beautiful acronym, GRACE. And in SC, everything falls right in line with that. And so all the tools and techniques I think that we utilize, it helps us to just come back into this moment. So whether it's teaching yoga or it's teaching some kind of fun movement or even just settling like we taught with the hands, or, I mean, I'm just going to put that out there that I think really for teachers and educators, there was no real one thing. It was just really being with them and learning what the needs were. And I think the overwhelm, right, was a big one. The overwhelm and just a lot of distress, the stress and anxiety. So it was just being able to meet you where you are and offering the resources and the tools in which many of us have shared today. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
This reminded me of, I was recently working with a teacher that, was in the classroom and experienced all of this, and just the uncertainty. And what we talked about, even to support her and her students was, just some of those simple things like we've talked about, just, at the beginning of the day, take time for all of you to just do some kind of grounding exercise. And the other thing we really talked about, and I know for teachers, this has been so many of the things that they do that are kind of the extra and that are fun kind of have been inhibited over the last couple of years. So we also talked about finding ways to just have fun and laugh with your students and just have fun, because there's been so much seriousness and so many things that they haven't been able to do. And so I think that's really important, just finding those ways to just have some fun and not get so caught up in all, having to do everything. Because yeah, it seems like it's been pretty serious stuff, right? They haven't had the same opportunity to do field trips or to be out and interact with other classes in the school or do those things. So even just doing some of those kinds of things.
Brain gym, just the same. It just made me giggle.
Brain gym, yeah.
Just kidding.
Brought
makes
it
me
over
laugh.
for this panel. I have to tell you, so I was in a traditional school for 10 years and I left because I was burnt out. And that's why I went to an online school and I've been there 7 years online. And what I found is I didn't know how to track my nervous system. I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I just knew that I thought I was having a heart attack from so much anxiety, because the need was so great when you have students who are trying to commit suicide, whose students are pregnant, where teachers come in and they don't know how to help a student and they're so stressed. And so some things I do for myself is I'm a yoga instructor. So I went through a yoga training. I do yoga. Dana, like Donica, shared, she has a great book on exercises. I make sure when I was towards the end of being in a traditional school, I would go to the bathroom. I would close my door and eat lunch for 20 minutes. These are things that I never did. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I just want to put a plug, and this isn't from SE, but if you're on Instagram and you connect and you follow them, they will send you posts, in your feed, which will show you ways to regulate your nervous system, and will show you what a suppressed nervous system looks like and what does a heightened nervous system work like. So I did a training for my staff at the beginning of the pandemic, and I took screenshots from Instagram from what they posted, and then I oriented them. I said, okay, quit typing. We're in a staff meeting. Like, be present. What's going on in your life? Like, be with me now. And so those are tools that I've used in the online environment that's really helped my teachers. So those are things I do.
Great. I love that we're just sharing resources here. It's such a cutting edge of health and wellness, isn't it? I'm popping on back on again because we are getting close to the time that we're supposed to spend together. We're supposed to be done in about 4 minutes, but the Q&A is still alive with chatter. People are asking some really cool questions. I love that someone's asking a question about Resba Menakam's work. He's definitely a member of the SE community who we all have a lot of respect for him. He wrote Our Grandmother's Hands, but the one that's got the most upvotes right now is Andrea's question. Andrea, if you would raise your hand, if you would, you said you'd like us to, you asked your question, but I'd like to bring you on screen to answer it. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna put her right on. And as she's coming on, I wanna say the panelists, would you all be willing to stay for about another 15 minutes? Like, I just think another 15 minutes is what the world is asking for. Folks, you may leave and you may go ahead and try and track this conversation down later at traumahealing.org/conversations. But we're going to get every little bit out of this we can today. And we're on a roll. So, Andrea, thank you for coming on. Go ahead and unmute. Hi, great to see you.
Hi, how are
Hello,
you?
we're willing to stay on for another 15. We're good. We'll go to 45 after. Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Andrea will stay. How about Danica, Katie, and Patsy?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, great. All right, I'm out of here. Andrea, go ahead and ask your question.
I asked two, or commented on one. My question was, we've been looking at a bunch of exercises and everything for kids and students and teachers who may be in a hypo state to kind of create some presence and awareness and connection to the body. And I'm curious to hear from you about your exit strategies for those students who are in a really aroused state, if they're really in a state of fight or flight or in panic. I work through a singing modality with trauma survivors. And so every now and then, working on a piece of music or connecting to a specific emotion through a character, a piece of music, or even sometimes just the regulation of breathing in some of the musical exercises, the vocal exercises that we do, and creating this presence can create a sense of dysregulation to where they don't feel safe. So I'm not a therapeutic practice. So for us educators and people who work outside of a therapeutic setting, what would you suggest we do in order to help calm some of those panic states without going into any kind of the trauma recovery or the trauma focus? Yeah, I think that's my.
Well, I can share. This is kind of a funny story, but and it might not necessarily work with your population, and depending, who you're with and how many you're with. But I used to have this little gal. She was about 10, and she would come into my office, and she would just be revving high, talking 1,000 miles a minute, and she would be mad and she would be sad, and it was like just this kind of tornado would whirl into my office, and there was no talking about anything. And I remember her being very mad at me the very first time I did this. But one of the ways that can help to settle nervous systems is through your breath, and by increasing your out breath to help to settle. So anyway, I suggested that we blow bubbles. And over the years, I've taken a lot of flack from teachers for, you just blow bubbles with students, you don't actually do anything. But this little gal came in, and she was, she'd come in several times like this, but this particular day she was so wound up. So I pulled out these bubbles and I just said to her, I think we should blow bubbles. Well, she was really mad at me. But anyway, she kept talking, but I set bubbles in front of her and in front of me, and I just started blowing bubbles. And she started blowing bubbles, and her little system you could just see it. And it came down. We were able to talk about what happened, and then off she went, and it was all good. So we kind of had this routine, because she would routinely show up at my office like that. And it got so I didn't even say anything to her. I would just pull out our bubbles, and we would blow bubbles until she settled and she could feel it. And then we would talk. So I guess I just think of, and like I said, I know bubbles aren't ideal all the time, but if there's a way, even with your clientele, just to one that I use with adults all the time is somewhere I found it, and they called it bunny breathing, but now I've renamed it a double breath, where you breathe in and then you breathe in some more, and then you breathe out like through a straw, like you have a straw for as long as you can. And I find with most people, that really is helpful. And most of the adults that I have really, really have found that one helpful. And you don't have to talk about anything. It's just, let's just take a minute.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I liked what Katie said earlier about let's go on a task. Will you come with me to get this paperwork out of my car or something like that? Katie, is that something that you find that you use with students that are in a hyper state or hypo or both?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I'm thinking about the students that I usually use it with, and it's usually when they're like in a activated state that's more anxious, or they're in kind of dorsal vagal, like shut down or frozen. But like what I guess I don't know if I knew this before SE training, but when you're in freeze, you're like in a very high state of activation. It's just like your body's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So that kind of like, that helps with those students because they just need to like switch it up a little bit and get out of their head and into their bodies. I think we do have a lot of students who are in this school because they are oftentimes like in their sympathetic, like I'm on level 11 all the time. Or like global high if like you're an SE student. And those students, like, I don't know, sometimes I think it would work. And sometimes it's like, let's do something that's less doing and more like, yeah, like a breathing activity or like something that, and I try to like model it in my nervous system as best as I can. Because I think sometimes when you're like that kind of thing, it could just continue. Like if you're doing like a, I don't know, super active task, it could just be like, okay, now I'm doing this thing with you, which could be good because it will like slowly go down. But I love the breathing, like breath work, or like something that's like I try and do something that's, it's not like here and they're here, but somewhere in the middle, so they're not super annoyed, because you hate that person when you're super activated or angry or triggered, and they're like, everything's gonna be fine, and you just
I'm married to that person.
Yeah, like, I can relate to that. So I don't know, like coloring or like sometimes I'll ask them what music they want to listen to. A lot of rod wave blasting from my office. But yeah, just like, I guess something in between. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
whether it's walking.
One of the things we do for vocalists anyway is straw phonation, especially if it's a vocal injury, blowing bubbles through water and regulating the speed of breath, especially if we're adding pitch to it, going high or going lower. Sometimes that can make less breath or more breath. And then asking them, can you make the same volume level or the same size bubbles from low to high? And so sometimes that helps as well. I guess I want to make sure that I'm on the right path, because for me, there's a delicate balance between allowing somebody to stick with and stay present with the emotion without going over the edge. And then I'm not a practitioner. I hope to become one, and I'm going to sign up to be able to make sure that I'm providing the safe environment for them to go there without going there so much that it becomes an unstable situation without the support that they need. So I do not work with trauma clients that aren't also with an SE licensed therapist and or somebody who does EMDR or something to that effect, because I find that this works pretty well as long as they have a support system outside of what we do there. Other than that, I'm just teaching singing without trying to delve into anything specific. But every now and then somebody gets really activated and I want to be mindful of that. So thank you. This is really helpful.
You know, Andrea, just before we go, something you all just made it is in singing and blowing bubbles and even movement. Sometimes the bubbles, right, or whatever you're using to slow breath down and that long, maybe sound to it. Incorporating like a low sound sometimes for very high activation is kind of nice. You know, like they used to do the B breath or or, you know, so sometimes if you're already teaching all that fun stuff, right? And then just slowing, if you're just doing, I love the bubbles, but like, could a bubble be like, you know, like just something really low tone just to kind of go. And standing exercises are nice, just standing still and just notice rocking forward slightly and back, and allowing this to ground down, like literally using the word down and noticing if they can just put all their energy on their feet right now. So little things like that are fun, you know, meaning they're fun, but yet they're very like, they're focused enough to where you just slow it down. And like just those fun sounds, like since you're already utilizing again voice, just, you know, maybe like a nice low, like whatever sounds, but sometimes humming is nice, right? Because you feel the vibration through your body. And then you give a moment for everybody, like, did you feel it? Where do you feel that? You know, or like you can just ask that simple question. And sometimes it's really cool because, oh, I felt that here, or I felt that in my hands. And it gives them a focus, right? It'll give them just a slow down and a type of focus. So that's always really fun. I was just thinking of that because you were just talking about all the fun between movement and utilizing sound or seeing voice, right? And blowing bubbles. Something came up with that bubbles. I'm like, ooh, that'd be fun to incorporate. You know, I don't know, something fun, and let them see if they can feel that, right? Because a part of SE really is about coming back into noticing what we feel or what you see, or, you know, so it's allowing, right? It's giving permission just to kind of explore and have fun with it. And you can make that fun for students. So it could be pretty grounding.
Andrea, I just wanted to say too, the first thing they teach us in our trainings is that trauma healing doesn't occur in isolation. So what really helps me is to check in with myself. Am I getting revved up? Am I getting stressed? Do I feel like I have to take care of this? And so that actually, you know, other people were so intuitive, right? Everybody is, that they can feel it. And I liked what Katie said, like meeting that person where they're at and checking where I'm at. Like, am I contributing to this? And one thing I found that's the opposite too, if someone's really revved up, I would have students like get down and do push-ups, and I would get down and do push-ups with them. Or I had boys running just because they had to get it out. They had to get it out. And the last thing they wanted to do was sit and be calm. But each nervous system is different. Like when people talk a lot, for me, it's too stimulating. Like I don't want to talk. I just want quiet. And other people love to talk all the time. So it's like knowing and watching people too, which has really helped me.
Thanks for sharing what you do, Andrea.
Mhm.
That's cool.
It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That last point, Colleen, like I really love sharing with you all how you're working it out, right?
Yeah.
Andrew, you're asking the questions, you're exploring, just really good for you for that. Like I love everyone here in this gathering is just in the chat. Everyone's like, well, help me understand this. People are asking, what's the CE part of GRACE? There's a website. You could go look up a couple of different ones. Maybe Kiana can drop one of the websites for the GRACE acronym in there. But Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. She just already, well,
I'm still here. I'm just hiding in the background. Thank you so much for your answers and your kindness. Thank you.
Colleen, I love the push-ups, and I've been in squat competitions. It's funny.
I'm gonna chat. It's been a really lively conversation because folks are asking a lot of really good questions, but I think let's just let you guys have some chat time among yourselves. I promised you this is a really fun series because you just get to hang out and chat, but we've been really answering a lot of questions and maybe have other things coming up with each other. There is another question in the chat. There's a couple others. So we'll be keeping an eye out, but we might people are talking about psychoeducation for combat veterans, about manuals for training and things like that. Everything I just want to say, go to traumahealing.org/conversations, and you'll see previous series that we do, and we continue to share exercises and just educate people. There's not a manual of SE exercises, but at this point, with how many people have been trained by Dr. Peter Levine and his faculty, a lot of people have a lot of these kind of exercises, and really once you get it, aren't we all just happy to share? Like it's just like, oh, I can't wait to tell you a cool thing I discovered. So we'll just let you guys chat for a moment, but the thing I kind of want to highlight and maybe put in your world a little bit, Serene in Turkey just wrote in like what a stigma there is around mental health, and so she's working with children with cerebral palsy is what she says, and special needs kids, and just like bumping up as an educator. So you guys are school counselors and educators, right? But she's bumping up against that part where it's like, how do I not break the boundaries of my own professional world doing mental health stuff or doing psychological stuff? And I'm inclined to say that everything y'all are talking about is really neurobiological. You're not necessarily talking about deep therapy work, but maybe you can talk a little bit about why SE works in your field with people like teachers, and why this isn't just reserved for therapists and counselors, and then whatever else you want to chat about.
For me, it's illegal to do any kind of therapy in the school. So why I love SE is these are just movements. These are helping them to be present and to track and learn their nervous system. So yeah, I don't do therapy. And I think the most important thing, I think for me, and I'll end with this, is just learning to check in with myself. Like, how am I feeling? What's coming up for me? What's charged and what's quiet and what's, hidden. And that really helps me serve my students.
I like that. That's a really big question. I feel like I could journal about that for a really long time, but yeah, I think like something that you said that I can relate to is like that SE isn't just therapy. And it's cool to be in a community where there's a lot of different ways people use it. Like it's not like you can go to one, you finish your beginning year and be like, I use SE, and you're not like, unethical or something. It's just kind of a way of being that you learn more and more about, and learn more specifics. But I feel like you could use it with any framework of therapy, or you could not call it therapy at all, and you could just be like, it's almost like learning how to be a human with somebody else in these really kind of like detailed ways. But that makes sense. But yeah, it's like for me, it's helped me be a better human, and not just a better practitioner, but just to have more self-awareness for myself, and like just be able to be with people and not have so much of an agenda. Like so many modalities that I get kind of frustrated with in my field are very like agenda focused, and it's like we're meeting this goal and we're doing this activity, and it's like, okay, let's just slow this down, and in this conversation we can just like go as slow as we want, and like start from anywhere you want, and like it can go as deep as processing something that with like a trauma, like very specifically, or it can be like, let's just notice, and like that's why I think it's really cool to apply to education, because like I think I noticed someone said like you're a frontline worker, and you're in this, especially right now, it's like you're with so many different nervous systems a day. And I know like all of you have said something about like a lot of it is checking in with yourself, and I love that like the most regulated nervous system wins out. That's something that we talked about in my last training. So that's like settling for me, because I'm like, okay, if I can learn to regulate my nervous system, then I can affect other people's nervous systems around me without using any of these tools, really, like specifically with someone. Like we're going to do this activity. It could just be like, I'm just going to be in this space differently. And that's been really helpful for me personally and professionally, I think.
I really love what you said, Katie, about, feeling like you're a better human. I do, it's true. Like, I feel like after, learning things in SE about, nervous systems, and I feel like I'm a better human, and I'm better at interacting with other humans, because you understand them differently and just look at that different lens. So I really like that. It makes you a better human. Yeah.
Like, oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. And that resonance, right, that you mentioned too, that yeah, it's not even that you necessarily have to do anything, but because you're different, it kind of filters out and other people feel it and notice it, that something's different. Yeah, yeah. I agree, totally.
Nervous systems talk to each other.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to run over your nervous system all the time.
Thinking a nervous system thing where I was like, I love hosting these panels. Y'all are so brilliant. It's so lovely you chat. And then I have to pop on. I'm like, don't pop on. Just let them talk. And I'm like, what do I do when I'm Okay, here's my question for you, ladies. What do you do when you're stepping on your own nerves? How do you get off your own nerves? All right, that's just a humble moment. Sort of. Guys, we're at time. We're at time. I didn't want to interrupt you there to get closing comments. I felt like that was really extraordinary closing set for us. Really. Being with each one of you is really powerful and lovely. Like, it's just so nice in that sort of resonant space we talk about in SE training of like getting the collective and also getting the person who you're with. And it's just really something to get each of the four of you. Like, you just stand very distinct in the framework that you each operate in as someone who just cares and is creative. Each of you have sparked me as like, I want to share this. I want to share this. So the generosity of who you are is really comes across. So thank you for letting us be with that. It's regulating for our own nervous systems to just be with yours. None of you have that frantic feeling around you of, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with as a teacher in a pandemic. And so I just want to note that because a lot of teachers are feeling that way. But like, you really just gave us that gift of the space that you're in to be able to regulate ourselves. Powerful, powerful stuff. So thank you to you guys. Thank you to the Institute for letting us experiment with this series, right? For experimenting with series, for trying to find new ways to get into the public health discourse with neurobiological ways to resolve trauma. This is a frontier we're all standing on together. There's something very pioneering. And it's really beautiful to share it with y'all. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you to all of our guests who have attended. A huge shout out to Dr. Peter Levine, the founder of the SC modality, who he just synthesized so many things from the depth of history and into the future of where mental health and wellness is going. And so we just really acknowledge him. We acknowledge all of the professionals who are working in the school space and all of you for what you'll keep doing in life. Please feel free to email us, get in touch. Is there anything anyone needs to say in closing to be complete with today? I don't want to just get on my nerves some more. Is there anything you all need to say to just be complete? Any one of you want to kind of provide a send-off for all of us, and then we'll call it a wrap?
Just be kind to yourselves. Kindness, but what do we say? Treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. Just always remember, be kind.
So much right there. So much right there. Thank you. Thank you, Danica, Patsy, Colleen, Katie. People will be able to find out more about how to get in touch with you. I think each of you are available for one-on-one sessions, perhaps. Some of you do some consulting. You do all different kinds of things. This will be posted probably within about 3 or 4 days, folks, on YouTube. And then you can always find it at traumahealing.org/conversations as soon as it's there. And you'll see the whole back series of any other ones that might help you. But on YouTube, in the part underneath, you'll get the contact information for each of these people. So you could reach out to them and stay in touch and really get resourced by what they have for you. Thank you all. I wish you a very beautiful weekend. In the States, we're celebrating Valentine's Day. So may everybody in the world just feel loved beyond measure by people you don't even know who just really are in the trenches and care about you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thanks, everyone.
To everybody.